what are some takeaways of the things that you got to experience in VR chat while learning that concept, and where do you think people should genuinely be focused on in the future?
I think that learning the idea of, especially opening, right? Like we talked about this earlier, right? It being an opening set, what that entirely means, and how you're not necessarily meant to be somebody who's coming in and performing the top thing, right? You're necessarily coming in and trying to get the vibes going, kind of get everybody moving, but not necessarily wearing them out in that first hour. And how do we kind of build that up, and do we play things that might be something that they're looking for? Yeah, you might be pushing for, some level of top 40 in that early portion, or something that at least maybe, no matter what genre you're playing, if you're doing house, right, something that's more that main stage house, right, that people might be more familiar with. But you're throwing some like different unique stuff that maybe they haven't heard, to kind of fill in some of those other gaps in the space, because you're just trying to get them vibing, trying to get them going. I think that has been one of the most eye-opening things, that not only when I learned to kind of transition how I perform, but also watching others perform and realizing where things were going and why certain things were happening at events, in terms of, you'd see a huge amount of engagement very early on from the people in a venue, right? They're all dancing, having a good time, really interacting with that DJ. And then all of a sudden you'd see this transition in terms of somebody else coming up to perform, and it feels like a ghost town. Everybody's kind of gone off into their corners and their niche little groups, and really understanding why that happens has been a big skill that I've learned.
What do you think about those people that are opening, and let's just say that they actually bring a ton of energy, and everybody, like, they're killing it, and everybody in the audience is receptive to that? And as you were saying, it's difficult to provide all of the energy, and then for the next person to come up, disrupt that energy based on the music that they perform, or maybe you outplay, you're the opener and you're outplaying the next DJ on the lineup. Who do you think that there's a fault to that? Do you think that there was a fault to whoever designed the lineup?
Yeah, no. I think that that's like a big thing too. I think, when we talk about like IRL DJs versus VRChat DJs, right? We have this transition and thought process, like that is the norm. There is repercussions. Sometimes I've heard stories about where people have done that in IRL venues, and what that looks like in terms of promoters talking to you afterwards, and having conversations about, future bookings and what that looks like. In terms of VRChat, I think it's a combination of both. I think we've seen a better transition now over the last year or so, at least in terms of my bookings and my communication with event coordinators and stuff like that, who were in charge of the bookings, but like understanding where somebody is in lineup and what they're performing to. And, I think that's been a big staple, that more event coordinators are really asking those questions of like, hey, we're booking you for this hour, 11 o'clock on a Friday. You're going to be the second DJ in the lineup. What are you looking at performing? Oh, you're playing some hard style? Well, we know the first guy is going to be playing some like general house, or maybe some easy stuff to get started. And then our third guy is going to be playing some techno. Do we maybe want to look at transitioning between slots and saying, maybe we want to transition to have you be the third guy in the lineup? Maybe that's something to look at. But I think that there's some genres too that you can kind of find a fluctuation where it's like you can go really simple and really vibey, and you can go really hard. And sometimes as a person making a lineup, you're not going to know that ahead of time, right? You're not going to know their set list. You're not going to know necessarily what they're going. So I think that there's another part of it, is really that DJ side of it, where the DJ kind of has to over time learn. And it really depends too in terms of the venue, right? Like, I think if you're having a festival, I think that that's a bigger piece to play versus maybe your social club. I think that you might find that a social club, it's not as big of a deal, because, people are off doing their own things. They're drinking, they're having fun, having conversations. The DJ might be second to that. So making those hard jump transitions like that in terms of one set to another might be okay, versus maybe something more of like your festival level lineup, where you have a bunch of people coming in really for the performances themselves. You might want to fine tune that when it comes to those, though.